So not everybody is stoked about the Nintendo Switch 2 product, and I wanted to sort of understand why. So I spent some time on the internet to really gather different opinions and the most common things that people don't like about the Nintendo Switch 2, and here they are. Now, before we get started, I just want to say that I do like the Nintendo Switch 2. It's not without its faults, like any product, really, but I think it's pretty good. I think the first thing that some people don't like about the Nintendo Switch 2 is just that it's popular, and anything popular has the opposition, right? Any sports teams that's popular, people hate them because it's popular. Any pieces of tech or tech companies like Apple or Samsung have their lovers and their haters. So there's just going to be some hate around the product just because other people like it. The second biggest reason that I think people don't like the Nintendo Switch, and maybe it is the biggest reason, is the price point. It has had an increase over the original Switch, but also the games have gone up in price for it as well. Now, I don't think the price increase for the hardware specifically is anything outrageous, in my opinion. We got a lot of improvements on the console. Things like, full HD, 120 frames per second screen, the fact that it can output 4K when it's docked, the Joy-Cons feel better, the back feels better, the stand feels better, it has internal memory. There's a lot of specs going for it that I think warrants that kind of price increase. However, when we're in a cost of living situation that we are now, that sort of stuff can hit us pretty hard when our favorite entertainment goes up. But it's not just the console increases that I think people are really mad at, it's the outrageous price for some of the new games. Like in Australia, for example, you could pick up Mario Kart 8 on the Nintendo Switch for like $79, and the new Mario Kart is $119. That is a big difference in terms of the RRPs. Now, obviously there's sales and stuff like that bring that price down a little bit, but when we first all saw that price, it made our guts a little bit wrenchy. That's not a good one. Whatever, we're sticking with it. I think the third reason that people are really turned off by the Switch is the game cart situation. There's a few things going on at play here, actually. There's the virtual game carts, which is essentially you put a cartridge in that is a digital game and it turns it into a virtual game card, right? The second thing with the game cards is how complicated they've made their game lineup. The game can either be on the cartridge or not on the cartridge. If it's not on the cartridge, it is a digital key code, and the cartridge will have a little symbol on it to say, hey, this is just the key code that you're buying in a fancy box for some reason, right? And I think that really puts people off, because if you're going to go to the trouble of manufacturing the game carts, the packaging, print out the game art, and sell it on shelves, why not just put the game on the cartridge? That's not necessarily exclusively Nintendo's problem, because it is mostly third-party companies that are putting these games on cartridges and selling it that way. And I think the reason is that game cartridges are expensive, more expensive than CDs or Blu-ray discs to put the games on, right? And especially as the games are getting bigger and bigger, and the fact that Nintendo Switch 2 can put 4K output means that these games are going to get much, much bigger in terms of size, which means that the publishers are going to have to incur more costs to buy the cartridges. But isn't that why we had the price increase on the games in the first place? Was to cover these kind of expenses? You can't put the price up with the games and say, oh, there's extra costs, and then cut all these costs out everywhere and expect people to be okay with it. There was a lot of misinformation about this when it first dropped. The games aren't on the cartridges. The games are on the cartridges. How does it even work? You have to legally disclose if a game is on the cartridge or not. So all the packaging is going to have this like ugly little thing at the bottom telling you that it's a game key card. But I would say that unless you know that going in, if you just go into a game shop, pick up a thing, maybe you're buying it as a gift, you're not a gamer yourself, you're not going to know what's on the cartridge and what's not on the cartridge. Let's move on to point number 4. And I think this one is just an interesting one. Anything that is evolutionary and not revolutionary gets a bit of hate in the market. Think of the new iPhone every year, right? There's a few subtle changes now that are improved every year, and everybody sort of gets online, gets hyped for this product. They look at it and go, is that it? Is that all technology has to offer us at the moment? Gone are the days where we had huge leaps in technology. I think the Switch 1 was a big leap in technology. We didn't have anything like that in the market, and I think that's why it struck a chord with so many people, because You had this product that you could take with you, you could dock and then play on your TV. It had Joy-Cons that you can slide out and you can play with a friend from the same controller that you have on the handheld. Nothing existed like that. And now you have things like the Steam Deck, you've had the Nintendo Switch for quite some time now as well. And it doesn't feel exciting anymore when the improvements are just, it has a higher resolution, it outputs a little bit better. There needs to be something that gets people excited. I mean, even the UI is exactly the same against the Nintendo Switch. And like, I don't have a problem with that because I care more about the games than the user interface of the product. But changing these things subtly can really help people feel like it's brand new. So the fifth and final reason that I'm going to talk about today is the games that are currently on the product. Now, I will say this, in terms of a launch lineup, I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is okay in terms of the products that it has. The thing that it has going for it is you can play all the Nintendo Switch back catalog of games that you own already. And I think that actually kind of feeds point number 4, where everything kind of feels the same. But it's like, well, if I'm just going to buy a brand new machine that is more expensive to play the same games that I already own, what's the point? Now, I will say this. The games that will come out on the Nintendo Switch 2 in the near future will be great. And it'll give us some new gaming experiences. Like, we look back at history in terms of the games that we've played, on the consoles that we've played, and we focus more on the games and the experiences that it gave us, rather than the chipset of whatever product it has. You know, no one's sitting there talking about, I love the RAM chip on the PS2. It had such a good RAM chip. Maybe AI would spit out something like that, but most people care more about the experiences that they get from playing these games. And I think the Nintendo Switch 2 will deliver that in the future. I mean, in terms of the launch lineup, there is obviously a new Mario Kart, and then they've taken some of the Nintendo Switch games and upgraded them. Very similar to what the PlayStation did actually from their launch. But I think the PlayStation showed more about the games that are upcoming in the near future. Like Wolverine was in the PS5 launch thing, and that game doesn't even exist as far as we know. We've seen nothing else from it, and that was years ago. So I think the PlayStation did a great job of showing people what's to come, whereas Nintendo like to keep things fairly close to their chest until a time where it can be released. And that's fine, that's their prerogative. It's their property, it's their product, it's their intellectual property, they can do what they like. But I do think that some people look at it and go, it's an awfully expensive way to play Mario Kart. So until those games come out, I feel like we're going to have that sentiment. Now I will stress this, that this is not necessarily my opinion, this is what I found in terms of my research. It's not that I agree or disagree with any of the points that are here. I actually agree with some of them, I disagree with others, and I think time will heal some of the other ones as well. But at the moment, that really is the conversation about the Nintendo Switch 2. What's good about it and what's bad about it? Does the good outweigh the bad? What do you guys think in the comments below? Let me know. I'm interested to hear.